We're talking about how to start an LLC in Maryland, and what you can see behind me here is a checklist that we're going to run through that's just going to really break this down and make it a lot simpler for us as we're going through this video. But before we get all to the nuances of LLC, I want to talk about how to avoid the LLC dumpster fire. What that is something where you get your LLC set up and then all of a sudden it's like 2-3 years later and an issue pops up and you're on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars in legal damages because you didn't understand the content in this video. So those are terms that such as piercing the corporate veil, or sometimes people don't understand what a registered agent is, or commingling funds, pass-through taxation. We're also going to talk about how the LLC renewal process works, and then business licenses and permits. And to do all of this, it's a lot easier if we just kind of zoom out a little bit. We talk about what an LLC actually does for your business. Now, if you're not familiar, an LLC is technically a limited liability company. So it offers limited liability protection. It also offers pass-through taxation. Now, to best explain these concepts, what we're going to do is walk through a scenario of owning a coffee shop but without an LLC. What that looks like is you have the business owner here in the center. On the left-hand side, you have their personal home, car, and bank account. And on the right-hand side, you have their business assets, the business bank account, point of sale, the cafe, the espresso machines, the lights. Now, in this particular case, there's a lot of liability because everything is directly connected back to that business owner. But if you have a different scenario of owning an LLC that owns a coffee shop, it looks something like this. Now the business owner is on the left-hand side. They have their personal assets. And on the right-hand side, we have Acme Coffee LLC. And then all those assets are underneath that LLC. In the middle here, we have a red division, which is just red because I wanted to highlight it. What this is known as is the corporate veil. Probably remember at the beginning of the video, we talked about piercing the corporate veil, and we're also going to talk about commingling funds right now. What that means is, in the unfortunate situation, if you were to be sued, what the attorney is going to try to do is they're going to try to look for cracks in your LLC. If the judge agrees that there is this valid crack in the LLC, maybe it wasn't set up correctly or maintained properly, they're allowed to do something called piercing the corporate veil. That gets rid of this division between your personal and business assets. When that happens, the attorney that's suing you can then come after not only your business assets, but your personal assets as well. A great example of this is the term commingling funds. What that is a lot of times people get their LLC set up and they don't start a business bank account right away. Instead, they run the business through their personal bank account for a while. So when you're commingling funds and you have transactions for your business running through your personal bank account, you're creating a crack for your LLC. And now you can see where this is going. Again, the attorney suing you finds out, the judge agrees, they allow them to pierce the corporate veil. Suddenly they're coming for your personal home, car, bank account. That's why it's so important to understand what an LLC does and all the different aspects around it. Now, what I want to talk about right now is an explanation of pass-through taxation. This just gets people in trouble because they don't really understand like how an LLC works when it comes to taxation. They think they're setting it up for tax advantages. You're not. You're setting it up to limit your liability. In this particular case, let's say Acme Coffee LLC grossed $140,000. You had $90,000 of expenses and $50,000 of net income. The IRS is not taxing your LLC. They're taxing you, the individual, the business owner. That $50,000 in net income passes through to your personal tax return. Sometimes this is called a flow-through taxation. So I just wanted to explain that because some people get a little bit mixed up with that as far as taxation. But the one thing I will mention, though, is that in the future, you can apply an S-Corp designation, is where right down here. That S-Corp designation allows you to change the tax classification of your LLC, and you can save on taxes in the future. Now, that's further on in this video series, but that's something that's really important that we're going to cover throughout this video. What I want to go into next is the checklist for starting your LLC. The first thing you're going to see on here is to get this checklist for yourself and to explore the bonuses and also the glossary of terms. There's going to be a QR code on the screen that you can scan. There's also a link in the description below. It's free for you to get this checklist. And when you scroll down to the bottom of it, here you can find a glossary of terms. So it's different terms you may not be familiar with, or there's definitions here. But the bonuses section is really cool. So you have this AI chatbot, and you can say stuff like how to start LLC MD. And then the chatbot's going to work, and it's actually going to create us a step or a checklist specifically for Maryland of the steps you need to consider. Also, how do I register an EIN? It's going to explain that, but we're also going to explain that in this video. A couple other things in the bonuses section. Really, the free charitable opportunity, you can get $20 when you're setting up your LLC for a charity. So that's explained there, and that's explained in the next video as well. Important tax deadlines for 2024. In the future, beyond 2024, we'll update this because this is a living, breathing document. So highly suggest you get this document for yourself. Once you get going, you need to decide which route you want to go. State site, online LLC services, or an attorney. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to go the state route, and then we're going to kind of explain why in certain instances, as you get going, it may make sense to go with a different route, like online LLC services or a business attorney. But the next video in this series is going to deep dive on this, and I highly suggest you watch that because I've seen people overspend by almost $1,500 to get their LLC set up because they don't understand the things that we're going to break down in the next video. All right, your first step is to decide on a business name for your LLC. Now, I'm going to take the pressure off a little bit here. This does not need to be a perfect name, and that's because you can have a name like Acme Coffee LLC, but underneath it, inside of it, you can have what's called a DBA, a doing business as, or a fictitious business name. When you have one of those, they act as the brand name for your business. So that could be Espresso Yourself Cafe or something like that, right? So don't feel like you have to have the perfect name. What you do have to have is a unique name. Now, what you can see right here is a state directory list. When we click on that, we're going to scroll down to Maryland, all right? And then right here. And what we'll have here is this is the actual database with the state of Maryland. And, stuff like, let's say you put in Turpins, right? Because you have said the Maryland Turpins, you're going to find that there's already a Turpin station. That makes sense. But when I do something like this and I just go blah, 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 and I do a search, this is where you're going to see that the business name you entered was not found. Try your search again. This is a good thing, actually. So usually warning messages are bad. This is what we're looking for, is you want a unique business name in the state of Maryland that has not been taken. So this is going to be a step that you're going to do right there. Next, what you're going to want to do is get your LLC set up once you have arrived at your name. Now, there's register your LLC name and then write your articles of organization. These are actually two different steps. The easiest way to describe this is kind of like getting a website set up. Now, you may not have the time and resources to build out the entire website today, and a lot of people will just buy the domain and sit on it. That's what registering your LLC name is you're just verifying and having that LLC name is registered for you and waiting for you to file your articles of organization. What your articles of organization are is the actual paperwork that you're going to fill out that forms an LLC within the state of Maryland. When you click on this state directory link right here, it's going to pop open, and this bullet point list right here is going to show us everything that you need to know about your articles of organization. And then you click on Maryland here, and you're going to get a form that looks something like this. And then what we have here is the articles of organization, and it has the name of the limited liability company, the purpose for which it is filed. So basically, what is the business about? The address, and then here it says the resident agent of the limited liability company in Maryland is. And it's kind of disappointing because it doesn't give you a lot of information on what the resident agent is. Now, if you look this up online, typically it's called registered agent. That's what it's known by in most states, but Maryland calls it a resident agent. And it's a third party that handles important information and documentation for your business. Now, going back to the coffee shop example, what they're going to do in that particular case is if you're being sued, there's a service of process notice that's basically saying you need to show up to court. That resident agent is going to make sure you're getting that documentation, the other information that you need for when you're going to court. The two rules with the resident agent is, yes, you have to have one, all right? It's required by law. They must have a physical mailing address within the state of Maryland, and it cannot be a P.O. box. It's just kind of a bummer that they just kind of breezed past that on this document here. Now, this is where, like, if you go through the state, they're not going to help you with your resident agent. If you go through an online legal tool, LLC service, those services will provide a resident agent to you for an additional fee. One of them in particular will actually give you the resident agent for free for the first year you're in business. And that's why sometimes going with those online legal tools is a little more beneficial. So then once you have all this set up, there's a certificate of organization, which is $100. And then if you want a certified copy of the document above, it's $20 per page. And the certificate of status at time of filing is $20. To get it set up, though, it's going to be $100 with the state of Maryland. There's no way around that fee. You're going to pay it whether you get an attorney or you go through an online legal tool or you go directly through the state website. But again, this document is going to lay out everything that you need to do down below, as well as if you want to file it by mail, do you want to go online and do it? You can actually hand deliver it. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. But what I want to talk about now is after you've assigned the registered agent and you filed your articles of organization, is you can create and sign something called an LLC operating agreement. Now, it is not actually required in the state of Maryland to have this done when you're getting your LLC set up. There's only 5 states that require it. But this is one of those situations where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The reason I say that is, let's say that you had a partner that started the coffee shop with you, and then you guys just blow it up and you've got 26 locations. And then all of a sudden one day your partner says that they want out of the business. Well, how do you handle that? Well, an operating agreement up front is going to say who the members of the LLC are, what are their roles and responsibilities, and it's also going to cover things such as like what happens if somebody needs to leave the business, like how are they compensated for that. When you don't have these things set up day one, what ends up happening is you have a lengthy legal battle, and it can cost tens of thousands of dollars because, again, you didn't take the time and energy to set up an operating agreement day one. Now, if you don't want to do this right now, you can do it in the future. I would just advise you, the earlier the better, setting up your operating agreement. These are available on the online legal tools. They have like an actual boilerplate template. If you have a more complex situation, you may want to talk to an attorney for dialing that in. But again, something worth mentioning. After LLC formation, this one right here, set up an EIN. There's an IRS link here. If you're not familiar, an EIN is an employer identification number. It's like a social security number for your business for the IRS, basically, a way for them to identify your business. This is going to be needed when you have staff, when you have employees on payroll, you're going to need an EIN. But it's also one of those things where, like, if you're like applying for a lease, like on a business space or maybe a loan or setting up your business bank account, insurances, when you have an EIN, it looks a little bit more professional and dialed in as opposed to providing your social security number. You can set it up for free for yourself using the link right here for the IRS. Also, the online legal tools, they will help you go through that as well. And when you're going through the state website, they're not going to help you set up your EIN. Just be aware of that. Now here, obtain business licenses and permits for your LLC. There's a really helpful link here for the SBA. And when you go to this, it's going to walk you through everything you need to know, but you can actually go down and do a drop down of your state and territory and look at potential results that are specific to your area. This is kind of like the best example that I can give you is if you were opening up a brewery. Now, with a brewery, you're brewing beer, you're distributing beer, and perhaps you're serving beer on premise. Those three things could all need a license or permit, but it could also be on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. A lot of times people get their LLC set up and they think they're done. Well, in certain instances, like you're a chiropractor or a dentist or you're starting a construction company, you need licenses and permits to legally operate those companies. So it's just a really good thing to go through once you get your LLC set up. What I'd recommend is you can call your local town or city clerk and just say, hey, I'm setting up this type of business. Is there any licenses and permits on the town level I need? And they may be able to direct you at things as far as the county level or the state level. Now, if you're going through an online legal tool, a lot of them will actually do this research for you for an additional fee if you're feeling nervous, if you have the right permits set up. But it's just something I wanted you to be aware of. Now, in the next video, we're going to be covering these 4 topics here. We're going to be getting into the fees associated with setting up your LLC. I'm not going to show it to you right now because you've got to watch the next video, but there's actually a calculator that we're going to go through, and down to the dollar will tell you what your LLC costs for the first 5 years of being in business. And with that calculator, you'll see how some people overpay by almost $1,500 when they're getting their LLC set up. Next on that video, we're going to be going over the star ratings, comparing the DIY through the state website or online tools or business attorneys. We're going to talk about why the state website can become a pain, and that has to do with domestic and foreign LLCs. We're going to break that down for you. And then we're going to deep dive into questions worth asking. These are things of maybe a business attorney does make sense to you. And we're going to go through each line of these questions and explain why these matter to you when you're getting your LLC set up. Again, I highly recommend you to get this free checklist for you. This is a Notion document, free for you to use, and there's a link in the description below. And once you have that, we will catch you in the next video right here. All right, see you there.